critical of the UK's new quarantine requirement for returning travellers. Spanish Prime Minister Pedro Sanchez said today that some regions of Spain are safer than the UK. But Number 10 is standing behind the new rule. Well, let's head to London for more on this from our political editor, Darren McCaffrey. Well, hello there to you, Darren. So Boris Johnson, Prime Minister, is undeterred and is sticking by his decision to impose quarantine for travellers from Spain, and has even suggested new quarantine measures for other EU countries. What's he been saying?
Yeah, indeed, a bit of a war of words between the British and Spanish Prime Ministers over this issue of a quarantine. It matters enormously to the Spanish, given that on a regular year, 18 million British people would travel to Spain. A quarter of all visitors to Spain come for Britain. And this imposition of this 14-day quarantine, a blanket quarantine for anyone who visits any part of Spain, including its islands, will clearly have a devastating impact on the Spanish tourism industry and a big impact on British tourists. Maybe upwards of 1 million affected by this decision, people who are already in Spain or people who were planning to go over the coming weeks. But as you say, Boris Johnson is unrepentant. He is suggesting that this might be a sign of a second wave and that Britain needs to protect itself, given the fact that it's been battling with this virus over the last few months.
Decisions for families, for individuals about where they want to go, and what we have to do is take swift and decisive action where we think that the risks are starting to bubble up again. And let's be absolutely clear about what's happening in Europe, amongst some of our European friends. I'm afraid you are starting to see in some places the signs of a second wave of the pandemic.
And it's not just Spain, Isabel, as well. Much talk about the fact that any foreign trip from the United Kingdom at the moment contains some risk that quarantines could be imposed at any time. And when you look around, actually, the continent at the moment, there are certain standout places like Luxembourg and indeed Belgium that have now got high infection rates, and also talk here in Britain as well that if rates continue to rise in places like Germany and France, the quarantines could be brought in for returning visitors to those countries in the weeks to come.
Yeah, Darren, the situation does seem to be in a certain amount of disarray, which I guess is understandable. But there are measures. It's not only the UK imposing quarantine on travellers returning from Spain. The EU seems rather absent, though, in coordinating what it could be doing to help the unfolding crisis if a second wave does unfurl, indeed, on the EU.
Yeah, I think you're right in saying that it's not just Britain who's taken action in the last couple of days. We know, for example, the German government today has essentially banned all but essential travel to 3 parts of Spain, those hardest hit in the northwest of the country. Finland as well has imposed new restrictions on people visiting from Belgium in recent days, and there have been extra checks demanded in Italy of people arriving from Romania and Bulgaria after spikes there. And we are likely to see this carry on, as you say, as infection rates fluctuate from different parts of Europe at different times. The EU does, to a degree, seem missing in the battlefield in all of this. They have really struggled with the issue of borders really throughout this crisis, from the initial locking down around March time to trying to reopen in a coordinated fashion. None of it's really stuck, and I think there is a sense when it comes to borders that countries are going to continue to act in what they believe to be their national interest, irrespective of what Brussels has to say.
Irrespective of what Brussels has to say. Well, Darren McCaffrey in London, many thanks. Now,